Oh, the polls are open? Oh, we're opening late? Well, good evening. I apologize for being here. I apologize for starting late. So, most of the stuff you guys already know. Can I see a show of hands who is a first-time chief or deputy? Is it just two? Okay. Yay! Thank you. Brave. Appreciate you. Have you guys worked as officers for a long time? Yes. And you? Yes. Okay, good. So some of this stuff you already know. I want to focus on the stuff that you really need to know on Election Day. So basically, it really is a reminder, but I'm going to do a deep dive into problem solving on Election Day. We're going to go through the rest of the stuff, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time there because I need you to be able to address any issues that come up and address them accurately, professionally, so that you're not being harassed and we're not being harassed on and after Election Day. So Election Day begins on November the 3rd. It ends on November the 6th. So just know that when folks are in the polling place voting on Election Day, we still will be receiving mail absentee ballots until noon on Friday. So, and those will be cast and counted and added to the count for Election Day. So just know that. We will. However, there's always a caveat. However, the guidance says that if there isn't a visible postmark, then we still pretty much get to accept it. It's sort of like the law for voter registration applications. If we receive them for the first 5 days after the deadline and we do not have a postmark or we can't read the postmark, then we have to accept them. So they just follow the same rule. Okay, let us go. All right, this is she, Constance Hargrove, the General Registrar. Since most of you are not new, you already know me, right? All right. Missy is not here. She's over at the office with the rest of the temporary staff that we've hired for this election. Alex, you guys have, I think, spoken to several times maybe this election. She's the elections manager. Our board, two of our board members are here. So Susan Bills, the chair, is here. And Caroline Emmons, the vice chair, is here. Mrs. Hart is not here tonight. She'll be here on Saturday. But just FYI, so you guys will know, just for you guys who have not been in the office, these ladies have worked tirelessly every day, curbside voting and doing whatever else needs to be done out in the lobby in our office. And let me just say, that is not the norm for an electoral board. I've been in elections for 26 years. I've never seen it. So when I say they work tirelessly, they have worked tirelessly this election. So I'm thankful. Thank you, ladies, for helping me out. Appreciate it. All right, so we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. And Alex, I hope we have an oath. So if we would stand, and one of the board members is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. You guys can choose. Which one? To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we'll come back to that. You can sit down. We'll come back to the oath. Don't let me forget, guys, before you leave to give you your oath, okay? All right. So there are a few new laws that you need to know about. The first one, of course, and I think I left off one, is the acceptable identification. As you all probably have heard, there is no longer a requirement for a picture ID. So you do not have to have a photo on the ID now. You can use a voter card. You can still use your driver's license and those IDs that have pictures, but it is not a requirement. The expiration date no longer matters. So you do not have to look at the expiration date on the document anymore. As long as they have an ID with their name on it, then it is acceptable. If they do not have an ID, they can sign the ID confirmation statement. So it's just a piece of paper that they're signing on the penalty of perjury that they are the person standing in front of you presenting themselves to vote. And if they decide they don't want to sign the statement or they do not want to present an ID, then their only other option is to vote a provisional ballot. This is what the ID confirmation statement looks like. Real simple. They just stand there, fill it out, and then you just check them in and give them a ballot. All right. You will have drop-off boxes in your precincts on election day. So you remember the red emergency ballot bags that we gave you some time ago? We are repurposing them for drop-off bags. So people will come in and drop their ballot in those bags on election day. So we'll give you a seal so that you can seal them so that no one can open them during the day, but you will have officers assigned to guard the bag. Preferably one Republican and one Democrat, okay? But there should be an officer there at all times. Wherever you place that bag, there should be an officer stationed there to watch that bag. So if they're taking breaks, switching off, whatever they may have to do, just make sure that you have someone there to watch that bag. If they're dropping off their ballot, they do not have to wait in line with the other voters. So they just skip the line, they come inside, and they drop off their ballot in the ballot bag. You will have to count these ballots at the end of the night and fill out a little certification form to come back to our office. It requires 2 signatures, so of course that means that 2 people will be there counting these ballots. Yes, ma'am. No. No. So you're going to complete the certification form. Just drop that form back in your bag and zip up that bag and just bring the whole bag back with the form inside, okay? And that bag comes back to our office, of course, on election night. So you're not going to know what these people are dropping in your ballot bag, okay? So you may have individuals who drop a Henrico ballot in your ballot bag. You're not going to know. You don't have to ask the question, is this a Chesterfield ballot or is this a Henrico ballot? That's not your job. So they're going to drop them all, then they're going to drop them in a ballot box. And then you're done, okay? No, ma'am, because you didn't issue it. So they're separate. They're separate. So these are vote by mail ballots that were issued by the office. Okay? Is that clear? Okay. Yes. Yes. No. You're just counting the envelopes. The question was, okay, there were 3 questions actually, but I can't go back that far. The question was, are you opening the ballots envelopes and counting the actual ballots inside, tallying the votes for the candidates? The answer is no. The other question was, do these ballots add into your total ballot count in your precinct? The answer is no. Yes. No, it will not. No, it will not. If they put a Henrico ballot in our ballot box, we cannot count it, and it is not timely received. So we have not received guidance that we will get it to Henrico County, so it means that it has not been received on time. We're not asking people. I'm sighing, board sighing, we're all sighing here. The question was, will you have extra B envelopes? So for those of you who've never voted a mail ballot, the ballot is supposed to be returned in envelope number B. So we send it out in envelope A, they put it in envelope B to send it back, and then there's a return envelope they're supposed to put it in. So we've had voters over the course of the past 3 weeks bring in ballots outside of an envelope, so a naked ballot, not in an envelope, ballot, they put it back in the A envelope and bring it back. And the problem with that is it doesn't have any information on it that identifies the voter, which means that ballot will not be counted. So the question actually relates to, are we going to make sure these voters' ballots get counted? Are we going to send you guys B envelopes to give to them? Okay, so I see 2 heads shaking up here that yes, we're going to give you guys B envelopes for the voters. So if you see a voter come in and they do not have a ballot in an envelope, give them a B envelope to fill out, which will have their name, address, and their signature on it. And then they can stick it in the ballot box. Otherwise, it's not going to be counted. We do it every day at the office, so yes, ma'am. There's always that option, yes. Yeah, so we'll save that for a little bit later. Oh, yes, ma'am. So the question is, if someone comes in, they drive up curbside voter? Okay. They drive up curbside voter with their ballot. Do you take the ballot inside or do you bring the ballot bag outside? I'm saying you bring the ballot inside for perception sake. Because you bring the bag outside, and somebody's going to say either you're stuffing the ballot bag or somebody's going to steal it. So, no, you bring the ballot in. Okay. All right. So you guys will have sneeze guards for this election. I know you didn't have them for June. We did purchase some sneeze guards for you. I will be attempting to put one together tomorrow to see how difficult it is to put together at one of the libraries. So I can tell you guys how hard it is, or if it's not hard at all. So basically, you can use these at each poll book, or you can use them at as many poll books as you want, and then use one at the forms table for the person who has to deal with provisional ballots, voter registration applications, and things like that. Okay? All right. So there's one other thing, new law change that I didn't put in here. So when the voter comes in to the poll book table, you ask them their name and address, correct? And before July 1, you repeated their name and address. Now you only repeat their name. So when the voter comes in to the check-in table, you ask for their name and address, and then you repeat their name. So here's the catch. So if you find that it is a voter that you cannot really determine who they are just by their ID or their name and address that they've given you, say there are 3 of them at the same address, Of course, then you can ask for more information, ask for their year of birth, and if you have to, the poll book officer has to, they can repeat back information so that they can make sure they're checking in the right person. So, I'm saying that is permissible, but for the poll watchers who are there, you're only repeating the voters' names because there are some voters who were afraid that someone would follow them home or something would happen to them if their address was repeated. Now, granted, most of these people are their neighbors that are voting with them, so if they want to follow them home, they know where they live anyway. So protected voters, their address, their address doesn't show up in the poll book. It's just their P.O. box that shows up in the poll book. So if they're a protected voter, their address isn't there anyway. But this was a law change. So just make sure the poll book officers know in the event that someone comes in and wants to test the system that they are only repeating their name. All right, so you're going to get the same PPE supplies that you had the last election. The microfiber wipes, the cloths that you're using, you can just trash those. Don't bring them back. We're not going to wash them. We have a whole bunch of them. Yeah, so the green and blue cloths that you had to wipe down the voting booths and equipment, just throw them in the trash at the end of the night. Don't bring them back. I do. I do. So it wasn't the one that you just flip it and it was just your take top off. Well, I'm sorry, the state sent those to us. That's all right. They also sent us cleaners without pumps. So, but we do have some new hand sanitizers, so hopefully you're getting enough bottles that have either the little flip top or the pump that you can use. You do not choose whether you want a mask. Mask is required. Yes. So the question was, if you have the shield, do you have to have the mask as well? The answer is yes. The other question is, are you required to wear the mask? The answer is yes. Are voters required to wear a mask? The answer is no. Yes, ma'am. Well, the state supplied the gloves. So I think they sent some better ones this time that stretch a little bit. I know some of the ones they sent the last time didn't have any give at all. So I think they did a better job. They're all larges, but a large on a large hand is not always a large. So if you're not comfortable not wearing gloves and you have an extra large hand, I would just recommend that you bring your own gloves. Okay. All right. So, oh, I see. Yes. Hmm. That is correct. It's the, it's the voter's constitutional right to vote. And so on election day, whatever facility that we're using, it becomes under our jurisdiction at that time. And so when the voter comes in, they do not have to have a mask, regardless of what building they're in. Okay, so make sure you're contacting your officers before election day. I know that many of you are wondering, when will my officers be trained? Every single officer who works this election has to take training. For regular officers, not chiefs and deputies, but for regular officers, the training is online. So they will receive an email that gives them a link to be able to log in and take the training. They and they alone can take this training because you have to register for it, and we had to purchase a license for everyone who will take this training. There is a quiz at the end of the training. You cannot skip it, and you have to pass it. So if the officer fails the quiz 3 times, they get kicked out of the class. Yeah, if they get kicked out, they can't go back in, okay? So at that point, they're going to have to contact the registrar's office, and they better have a good reason for failing an open book test. So here's the deal, and this is the real deal. If they fail the quiz 3 times, they probably will not be assigned to a precinct. So if it's somebody you definitely want to work, you better tell them to pay attention and to open up the resource documents that are attached in the training. Because, and it's for your protection, for our protection. Because if they're providing the wrong information because they just choose to guess, then, you know, we can get sued, and then you guys get yelled at on election day. Yes. There is no paper version of the test. You, you, okay. So the training is online. There isn't a paper version. There is no in-person training. Don't know what to tell you, really. If they don't have access to a computer, then yeah, I mean, I heard somebody say, you know, help them out. So they can go to the library and take it. Once they click on that link, it's just as simple as clicking either enter or the mouse to go through the training. They do have to have email to get the, well, they do not have to have email to get the link. If you want to help them, they just have to register for the class individually. Well, you can get Alex to send it to you, but you have to let us know who the officers are that need to take this training that do not have access to a computer. Yes, ma'am. They need to get it done as soon as possible so that we can assign them to your precinct. They will be sent tomorrow. She may have sent it today, but I know definitely it will be sent tomorrow. So the question is, when do they have to have their training completed? As soon as possible, so that we can assign them and let you know who you have working in your precinct on election day. Does anybody else have officers that does not have access via their child or friend or the library to a computer where they can actually take this training? If they do not, they can actually come to our office and we'll let them get on one of our computers and take the training. There is that option. So if you know you have those individuals, tell them, you email us, because they can't, email us their names and information, and we will contact them to set up a time when they can come in and actually take the class. Okay? All right. So the quiz is a real thing. Just make sure that they understand that. It is an open book. These documents that you have today are attached in the training. They can open them, they can print them, they can save them, they can refer to them when they have to answer the questions. But they do have to answer the questions. This is the only training that they will be offered. All right. So make sure you vote absentee, folks, or vote early if you're not working in your home precinct. I will also say, if you think you may forget to vote by 7 o'clock, if you're working in your precinct, then you need to go ahead and vote early. Make sure you're following up with the polling places, the precincts, to understand where your location, where they're putting you. I'm sorry, brain dead here. Where they're putting you on election day, and make sure that you're okay with that. Now, the schools did send us a list of the locations today, and I saw some of your names that you've contacted the schools, the principals, and talked to them about where you're going to be set up. So if you have the ability to do that, please contact your facility ahead of time to make sure that you know where you're going to be put. I would also contact them to see when you can get in there, maybe on Monday, to set up your polling place, because you want to put down your social distancing things, and just make sure you're all ready. You might be able to even set up some signs outside before election morning, because I promise you, even though we have a lot of people that have already voted and will vote, there will be people in line by 5 o'clock on election morning. So you want to have everything set up for your social distancing ahead of time. All right. Yes. Yes. So if your precinct is not in a school, the question is, can Alex give you guys the contact information? The answer is yes. I saw a hand. Will there be adequate copies of the constitutional amendments? We have more than enough. If you want one for each registered voter, we probably can give you that. Okay, so set up your precinct, pick up your supplies. Saturday, the last Saturday, October 31st, is still the day where you can pick up your black bag if you want to pick it up ahead of time. On Sunday, you will pick up your passwords, your poll books. So your emergency poll books are actually now paper poll books. If you guys have been around for a while, you know what a paper poll book looks like, right? So that is your emergency poll book for this election, okay? It is a state requirement. It's a new law. We have to print out the paper and give it to you. So, never fear anymore. If the poll book, electronic poll book doesn't work in the morning, guess what? You can start flipping pages. I know, right? Sounds like fun. Huh? Paid more. Oh, paid more to. The county has already given you an extra $100 to flip through those pages. Ooh, I'm not going to tell them y'all laughed at that. Yes, ma'am. That's actually a great question. So the question is, if you do have a poll book, electronic poll book problem, and you have to use your paper poll book, do you enter those people into your electronic poll book when the poll books are back up, or do you keep them separate? You enter those people into the electronic poll book when your poll book is back up. So if you have 3 poll books, get the third person to start entering those people into the poll book when the poll book is back up. This is better than having to vote a provisional ballot for each person if your poll book is down. So it's actually probably a good thing to be able to add them back in. Okay, so Sunday, 2 to 5, Monday, 9 to 4. You can pick up everything on Sunday, you can pick up everything on Monday, but you can only pick up your black bag on Saturday, October 31st, okay? When I say 4 o'clock, I mean, yes, 3:59. I mean 4 o'clock. Because trust me, By the time Monday at 4 o'clock gets here, we're going to be dead on our feet, and you want us to be able to answer your questions the next day. So we're going to go home and get 2 hours of sleep, and we're going to come back and be fresh for you guys and answer your questions the next day. So I say 4 o'clock because, if we close at 5, if we leave, then you do not have your supplies. So what we're going to do is call the next person in line and say, hey, I'm down a chief. Can you come pick up these supplies? So no mercy, no mercy, no mercy. It's a presidential election. I don't want you guys scrambling any more than I want us scrambling. So the sooner you can get your supplies, the better off we all are. Because if you go through your supplies and find that something's missing, then we can resolve that early, as opposed to you finding it on election day when you're trying to actually do something. All right. Okay, we're not going to look at that one. All right, so setting up your polling place. We all have been through this before. You want to try to set your polling place up with as much social distancing as you can. We've asked the schools to give you the largest space that they can give you. I saw that a few schools are in hallways. Most are in gyms and cafeterias. Now, the one that I did see in a hallway, the chief had met with the principal and was okay with it. So I think that one was fine. If you want to, you can contact Alex and find out whether or not, if you're in a school, you are located in a hallway. If that is a problem, then you need to contact that principal and say, hey, can you move us to another room? I'm not sure why they put you guys in a hallway. Schools are not open on election day, so really not sure. But if it is a problem, and you know it is a problem, and it has been in the past, then if you contact the principal and there's an issue, let me know. Then you contact me directly, and then I will deal with the schools. Okay? All right. All right. Cool. We could talk about that, but they should get it out of there ahead of time. That really wasn't a question for the rest of you. That was an issue she had on the last election. All right, so make sure when you get your, in the morning, when you're unpacking your supplies, that you do not forget to give your oath to the officers. Give your officers their oaths ahead of time. Assign their job duties. Make sure that scanner is open early enough. So if you have any issues, you can contact us. Same thing with your poll books. Remove your ballot record report and go ahead and verify the number of ballots that you received and your ballot styles. Oh, and yes, you will have authorized representatives in the polling place on election day. You may have more than one. So just make sure you have some chairs for them. Decide where you want to put them. Decide where you want to put them, and try to social distance as much as possible. They still are allowed to hear the check-in process, and they will probably want to be in a position where they can observe what's going on in the entire polling place. So just to decide where you want them to sit. They do, the authorized representatives do have to wear a mask. Yes, ma'am, in the back. At 5 a.m.? So yes, they can. So technically, they can be there when you open that scanner. So the question is, can they come in and watch setup in the morning? And if you're opening the scanner early, they can be there to make sure that there's zero tape prints. So yes, they can come in and watch. I don't know that anybody would want to come in and watch setup. They want to be there? Give them some signs and some tape. Tell them put these signs up. But just know that you will have authorized representatives throughout the day, I'm sure. Remember, you control the precinct. You control the polling place. If they start talking to people that they should not be talking to, you can ask them to stop. If they continue, you can ask them to leave. Yes, sir. They can use their electronic devices at the table. They just cannot talk on the telephone while they're in there. Okay. Oh, can they eat inside the polling place? No, so they cannot eat inside the polling place or are on the table. As a matter of fact, they shouldn't even be that close this time because, we can, the good thing, I guess, about COVID is we can say you got to back up. I use that all the time now. We need to social distance, please back up, because it gives you a little bit of breathing room. That's the one good thing about COVID. It gives you a little bit of breathing room. Ooh, that's a bad word, isn't it, Susan? So authorized representatives cannot take pictures. So let's do this, guys. So in your election day guide, since we're here, let's look at the authorized representatives. It looks like it may be on page 26. Oh, you guys don't have any? Or maybe it's, okay, wait a minute. Our page numbers are wrong, aren't they? It sure isn't. Okay, thank you. Page 23, everybody. Well, those are persons allowed inside. I'm looking for authorized representatives. Hey. No, I'm looking for authorized representatives. Okay. Yep, so page 3 talks about the authorized representatives, welcoming them, and I don't know where the do's and don'ts are. All right, but this is a good reminder anyway. So they have to have proof of confirmation or identity, and you check their voter registration status, right? So can they come in and just say, hey, I'm here representing the Republican Party? What's required? A letter of authorization, either from the local chair or from the state party, if the local chair has given up the right to have someone there. Local trumps state. That never happens, right? Local trumps state. I don't think you're going to have any problems. I think they're going to coordinate. Sample ballots for this election can be on any color paper. So if the voters come in with a yellow piece of paper as a sample ballot and is, has a Republican Party or the Democratic Party, it does not matter. That was changed in the code. So any color sample ballot they can have in the polling place. All right. Since it's not here, I'm just going to tell you, but the do's and don'ts are in your binder. So they can't eat in there. They cannot take pictures. They certainly can't videotape. They cannot talk to the voters. They cannot say, hey, come back here and ask for a provisional ballot. Okay? They cannot do that. They can challenge a voter. So if a voter comes in and they give their name and address, if that authorized representative knows that person and challenges that person to say that person doesn't live there, they can do that. And they use the same challenge form that you would that you guys use to correct addresses and things like that. So it's the Affirmation of Eligibility form. The back of it is actually a challenge form. They can challenge the voter. They have to sign, put their name and address on that challenge form, but they can actually challenge a voter. They cannot keep going in and out of the precinct. They just can't do that. That's distracting. Yeah, you read that right. So you see that in there? I just had to make sure they didn't change that. You should be able to look them up in the poll book. And it says if you can't find them, call us. So here's the deal, guys. Here's the deal, okay? And I think the board will back me up on this, I think. They come in with a letter of authorization. They show you their ID. It is their name. It's signed by the party. I'm pretty sure they're okay to be in the precinct, okay? You don't want to get into a big argument with authorized representatives and then have to send the electoral board out to the polling place to address that. I think they know the rules. We give them the rules. They usually send somebody who's registered to vote in Chesterfield County, or at least who's eligible to be registered to vote in Chesterfield County. The only time we have issues is when attorneys for the different parties try to show up and be representatives in the polling place. Then we have an issue. So they're going to show you their driver's license. It should be Chesterfield County. If it's another locality, then you can address that based on the code. So have your piece of paper handy to say, hey, you need to be a resident of Chesterfield County if you want to do that. Okay? If not, board, are we good? They're shaking their heads, yes. We're going to save the questions unless it's about authorized representatives. Okay. So the challenge, the question or statement was that they can only challenge based on the name. No, that is not true. They can challenge based on the address because the voter has to state their name and address. That is correct. We're only repeating the name, but the voter states their name and address. All right, moving on. So this is what's on your ballot. President, United States Senate, House of Representatives, which are your congressman and congresswoman, the 4th and 7th congressional districts. So there are 2 different ballots. One's the 4th, one's the 7th. And then you have 2 proposed constitutional amendments on the ballot. Do not let anybody tell you the president's not on the ballot. President's on every ballot, okay? I'm not the only one that's heard that this election, and they're shaking their heads. The president is on the ballot, okay? Don't let anybody tell you it's not. This is your ballot record report. Is there anyone who needs me to go through this ballot record report? Very cool. You will have to watch the scanner video and express vote video because it is required by law.
Position the vote counter
We'll come
and
back
plug
to
it
that
into
after the
the
video.
electrical plug. Open both ballot bin
Can you
doors
hear?
and the emergency ballot bin and ensure they are all empty. Close and lock after doing so. With the vote counter plugged into electricity, unlock and raise the lid. The vote counter will activate automatically. If it does not, check your written instructions for the procedure to manually activate. A password screen may appear, in which case the password will have to be entered using the keyboard on the screen. If needed, the password will be in your written instructions. Then press the Accept button on the screen. If no password appears, then don't worry about it. The configuration report will print. While it is printing, visually confirm the precinct number in the upper left of the screen is correct and confirm that the public count at the top center is 0. Next, press the Open Poll button on the screen, at which the 0 tape will print. Officers should sign the 0 tape and leave it attached to the vote counter. Roll up the paper and secure with a paper clip, ensuring it is out of the ballot path. Next, press Go to Voting mode on the screen and the vote counter is ready to accept ballots. Voters insert their own ballots and should be told to do so face down. If there is a problem with the ballot being accepted, it can be inserted long ways in any configuration. If a voter has overvoted, the vote counter will pause and show on the screen all of the offices that have been overvoted. If there are too many overvotes for one screen, a Next button will appear, and that will be pressed until all overvoted offices have been displayed. A Return and a Cast button will then appear. An inquiry of the voter will have to be made, and if the overvote is in error, press Return. If it is deliberate, or if the voter has already left the polling place, then press Cast. If a voter enters a blank ballot, the vote counter will pause to confirm whether to return or cast, similar to an overvoted ballot with no additional display. When the polls are ready to be closed and all voters have voted, check the emergency ballot bin for ballots. If they are present, insert them into the vote counter. When ready to close the polls, open the door on the top left side of the vote counter and press the Close Polls button, holding it down for 5 seconds. Next, press the Close Poll button on the screen. 3 results tapes will then begin printing. Once the first tape is printed, tear it off and report to the office. This tape, which will include the configuration report and the zero tape, as well as a copy of the results tape, should be attached to the SOR for the registrar. After the second and third result tapes have printed, a write-in report will be printed. This write-in report must be separated from the third results tape and attached to the SOR for the registrar. Next, press the Finished button on the screen, after which the machine will shut down. Close and lock the lid. Remove ballots from both ballot bins in the ballot box and rewrap the electrical cord at the rear of the vote counter. Return the vote counter to the cage for loading.
I'm going to stress this, and it's very serious. Do not put anybody at the scanner who's just going to stand there with an I voted sticker. If they're at the scanner, you heard of the messages that will come up. If there's a blank ballot, it's going to pause, right? Spit the ballot back out. Make sure whoever is at the scanner is watching and paying attention to what the voter is doing. Do not allow the voter to cast a blank ballot. If the voter stood in line and came to your precinct on election day, they decided they wanted to vote for something. They didn't just come for no reason at all, I'm assuming. So we have a lot of first-time voters that are voting this election. And they're not just young people, they're older people. We have individuals voting whose English is not their first language, and so they get confused. And so make sure the individual who's there at that scanner is paying attention to the messages and explaining them to the voter without just hitting the button cast. Because then they go home and complain. But once their ballot is in the scanner, it's nothing that we can do. You know, I feel bad for them, but I can't change the outcome. They've already voted their ballot. They can explain to them that you can leave, offices blank. It will still count everything else on the ballot. But if they're just standing there, they're not doing you or us any good. I hate to say that, but that's just the reality. We've seen too many things happen this election with early voting in our office, and we know that it happens. People will come in and they will put check marks on their ballot. So they put check marks, they circle, they bubble in the person's name and then write the person's name. They do a lot of things because they just don't know what they're doing. So, your voting booth officer, your scanner officers are critical for this election because they're the last persons these voters see. The first persons, of course, are the poll book officers. The last persons they see are these voting booth officers and the scanner officers, and they need to be helping the voter because they really don't know what they're doing, unfortunately. So, I know that if you have someone you're putting there who's not going to be helping, you need to have someone else there as well. And if you have 2 scanners, they need to be able to watch both. So if they can't, then you need to assign 2 people. Okay? All right. Cool. That's real clear. Good.
Remove the express vote case from the top shelf of the cage and place it on the table. Unzip the top cover and carefully remove the express vote from the case. Retrieve the power supply from the side pouch of the case and the headphones from their storage location. Carefully lay the express vote face down on the table and extend the support stand on the back. Insert the round end of the power supply cable into the express vote. This may be easier to accomplish sitting down at the table. Be sure to identify the top of the round end of the power supply cable as being square with 2 arrows on it. Once the power supply cable is inserted, stand up the express vote, confirming the express vote stands on its own with the extended support stand. Connect the power supply to the electrical plug. Open the small door on the left side of the express vote using the round key. Confirm that the voter official switch is in the voter position. Set the power switch to on. Close and lock the door using care to properly position the cable leading to the keypad in the cutout portion of the door. While the machine is booting up, attach the headphones and remove the keypad from the left side and place it on the table. The express vote will present a screen requiring an election code. Enter the election code as provided in the written instructions. Use care in typing the election code. Confirm each letter or number or special character as it is entered. The election code is case sensitive, so press the shift key for capital letters or special characters, such as the exclamation point. Once the election code is entered, press the accept button on the screen. If it reports an error, press the clear button and try again. After 3 unsuccessful tries, the express vote will shut down and you will have to restart. Activation of the express vote ballot occurs when the ballot card is inserted. The ballot card must be inserted with the cut corner in the upper right. Once the ballot card is inserted, follow the screen prompts or audio commands to reach the actual ballot. Navigation of the express vote by the voter is like the previously used AutoMark machine. When the voter is finished and the ballot card is printed, the ballot card is removed from the express vote and inserted into the DS200 using the guide on top of the new ballot guide. The ballot card may be inserted in any configuration into the DS200 using the top guides on the new ballot guide. When the polls are closed and all voters have voted, open the small door on the left side of the express vote using the round key and move the power switch to off. Reattach the keypad to the lower left side with the Velcro. Disconnect the headphones. Carefully lay the express vote face down on the table and disconnect the power supply cable. Note that the square just below the round interface of the power supply cable must slide down before it will disconnect from the express vote. Please do not force removal of the cable, which will damage the express vote. Park the support stand by pushing it in. Store the express vote back into its case. Place the power supply into the side pouch. Store the headphones according to written instructions. Secure the case by closing the top cover and zipping it shut. Store the express vote case on the top shelf of the cage.
I only have 2 things to say about the express vote, and that is, please do not let your officers open the front of the machine and put the headsets in there. So they're opening a space where they should not be in, and they're inserting the headsets inside, which will, of course, break the machine. So just make sure they just put them in the side of the bag. They don't have to be creative. Just tell them to put it in the side of the bag, and we'll be very happy with that. Okay, just lost my train of thought. Okay, I have to come back to that. Anyway, so it was 2 things about the express vote, but now I can't remember what it was. Okay. Must not have been important. All right. Oh, we will have discussion after this video. So this is your electronic poll book video. So this is the check-in process. So we need to talk about some things about voters and their status and what you need to do with that.
To launch the electronic poll book, locate the Advocate PCC icon on the desktop and double-click it. This will bring up the import screen on which you click Browse, and the thumb drive in the laptop will automatically be recognized, as will the file on it, the poll book file. So answer yes to the question, and the import of the election will then begin. This process will take a few minutes, which is why we advise to set up the electronic poll books early in the polling place setup process. Connect all the cables, plug all the devices in, insert the thumb drive, and then turn on the electronic poll books and begin this election import, so it can be going on while other things are being set up in the polling place. Once the import is complete, the login screen will appear. Enter your user ID into the login screen and click Login. On first login, the recognition of the thumb drive again will occur to be used as the location to store backup data. Answer yes to that. You'll be presented this screen to adjust time if necessary. Just click Open Poll Book there. And the next screen will be the actual voter search screen, the screen that is used to look up a voter who presents themselves to vote. This is the voter search screen. When a voter comes in and announces their name and address and presents their identification, you can begin typing their name, last name into the search box. Type a last name in, comma, and then you can put a first name. Begin typing a first name. You know we have Jones J. At the bottom here we have one with an AB, which indicates an absentee voter, not one that you should expect to present themselves to vote. If that happens, refer to the Chief, Office of Election. But when you identify the voter who's standing before you, click on their name. Once you've validated their ID, they're ready to check in. Just click on the Check Voter In button, then click on the Confirm button on the other side of the screen, and the voter's now checked in, and the background color of their information turns red to signal that they have indeed been checked in. Then click Clear, and you're ready to search the next voter. Soon the next voter's name is Smith, perhaps John Smith. So we put that in, and we find no search results. In the upper right, you have Search Scope, Precinct, and All. If you don't find a voter, you can click on All, which then goes from the voter list for your precinct to the voter list for the entire locality. There you can perhaps find the John Smith that you were looking for and refer them to their proper precinct. In this case, we see it is 108 Ecoff. Note that the Check Voter In button is grayed out, so we cannot check in a voter in our precinct who is not assigned to our precinct. In this situation, then go back to the list, click Clear, and it defaults back to precinct search. So the next time you search, you are searching just in the precinct. Note here a voter with a yellow triangle next to their name instead of a green check mark. We hover over that. We see we have a question mark and an H, an inactive voter whose address needs to be confirmed, and H is a personal ID required under federal requirements. And the voter ID chart will help you there in determining what ID is appropriate. A voter with a yellow triangle is not prohibited from voting, just other things must occur with that voter as they check in and as you complete the processing of them. Sometimes with complex last names, it may be advantageous just to search by first name, in which case you can put a comma and then type in the first name, and it will provide all the last names that match that first name. Kind of a handy trick, again, when there are maybe a complex last name. At the end of the night, go to the Options button in the lower left corner, click on it, click Close or Suspend Poll, then click Close Poll. This requires a password from a Chief Officer of Election, who will enter their password, because once an electronic poll book is closed, it cannot be reopened. And once any one is indicated to close on a connection, all of them on the connection are then automatically closed. Concurrent with closing of the polls and closing of the electronic poll book, data is exported to each thumb drive, which is then removed from the laptop, placed in its specified container, and delivered to the registrar's office. A message occurs that the device was closed, information was exported, click OK, and now the electronic poll books are all closed. Use of the electronic poll book is indeed as simple as it has seemed in this demonstration. It is a great tool that allows us to check voters in very quickly.
Okay. So let's talk about the check-in process. So your poll book officers, right? So I'm a voter. I'm presenting myself to vote. So I'm standing in front of you. What is the first thing you're going to do? Really? Get their ID is the wrong answer. Say good morning, but what are you going to do after you say good morning? Please state your name and address, right? Or if you want to say, please state your name and your residence address, just in case they want to give you the wrong address. So state your name and your address, right? Then what are we doing? You're looking them up, and then what? You're going to look at their ID. So I came in and I told you that my name is Laverne Hargrove, and I live at, I don't even know my address, whatever, Sunkiss Avenue. And then you said, okay, and you start typing. You're like, well, I don't see you in the poll book. Did you change your name, or did you get married? Or would you just say, you're not registered, you can't vote? Which one would you say? The first one. So then I'll say, well, actually, my name is Constance Laverne Hargrove. And then you look me up, right? And you find me. And now, you want my ID. So I'm going to give you my ID. My ID now says Connie Hargrove. Can I vote? Why? Because it's a similar name. So you can allow me to vote because the name is similar. It's a common nickname, so you know that it is me, right? If I'd given you some other ID, that would be bad, right? So on this video, you saw Larry click on the person with the yellow triangle, and it was an I and an H, right? So they were inactive, and they had an H. They were a HAVA voter. If you look at page 6 of your what if, for the past few years, when they changed the law that everyone had to have a photo ID, it made life easy for everybody, because the HAVA voters didn't really matter anymore, because everyone had to have a picture ID. That is not the case anymore. So HAVA stands for Help America Vote Act. And so when Help America Vote Act was enacted, it allowed voters to register to vote through the mail. So because these voters are first-time registrants, they're registering to vote for the first time, they're first-time voters, they have to show a particular type of ID. So one of those IDs can be a picture ID or driver's license or whatever. But if they don't have one of those forms of ID, they're required to have what you see here on this sheet: a copy of your utility bill, a bank statement, government paycheck, other government document containing the name and address of the voter. Now, most of the time, the address on the ID doesn't matter, right? For most voters. But for the Harvard voter, if they do not have a photo ID and they decide to show you a piece of mail, it has to have their current address on it, their registration address. So I just wanted to point that out because this is a federal election, you may have some of those voters who come in and it's not something that you see all the time. So I just want to kind of have you thinking about the fact that, okay, if they show up, then, these are the forms of ID that they can have. If they do not have one of these forms of ID, it says here, they cannot sign the ID confirmation statement. So they cannot sign the ID confirmation statement. They have to vote a provisional ballot. Okay? So that's the difference between a voter who comes in and they are a normal voter, and they just do not have an ID. They sign the ID confirmation statement. These voters, if they do not have the correct type of ID, will have to vote a provisional ballot. Okay? All right, that one's easy. What would it look like on a poll book? It will have an H beside their name. Yes. So the question is, will you handle the voter's ID for this election? I said that because that's just what I say. Yeah, so you will handle the IDs as safely as you can. And I'm going to leave it at that. Okay? Or not handle the IDs. All right. So the voter is on the poll book, but their name is different. You found me, but my name really is different from what you see in the poll book. So I can still vote, right? But what do I have to do? I have to fill out a voter registration application to update my name before you allow me to vote. So form first, vote second. Okay? So make sure you get that update before you allow that person to vote. But they can vote. All right. So these people without the H, so they have a question mark beside their name, right? So these inactive voters. So some of these voters may have the issue of what? Why do they have a question mark beside their name? You're not speaking very loud and proud, but so I heard that they haven't voted in a while. Address issue. Yeah. So basically, they do have an address issue. That's kind of the broad category that we're looking at. And some of them have an address issue, again, because they only vote every 4 years, and they moved in between that time. And they did not update their voter registration address. So they were probably under the impression that when they went to DMV, it was automatic. It was not. So their address did not get updated. So if it's been 4 years since they moved, where is that one? So they moved 4 years ago, and that is in between, maybe on or before November 9th, 2016, you think? Right? So somewhere around 2016, right? Because this is 2020. So on or before, if they moved and their address has not been updated, and it was before the presidential election in 2016, they have to meet some pretty strict criteria, right? All right, so they moved and they didn't update their address. So you can give them a provisional ballot. However, for a presidential election, no, that's not going to work for them. Forget that. I'm not going to say that. So they can vote a provisional ballot. So let's say it's the presidential election. They moved after the presidential election. I guess that was probably November the 9th, the day after the presidential election in 2016. But they moved before November 5th, 2019. Okay. So the people, the last person I was talking about, they just can't vote. They're done. Or they vote a provisional ballot. This group of people who moved between November the 9th, 2016, which is the day after the last presidential election, and between November 5th, 2019, which was last year's election, they have to meet two-pronged criteria, okay? This is not explaining it right there. But they have to still live in Chesterfield County. That's the first test. So if they moved in this broad category and they come in and they say, you say, okay, the poll book officers say, okay, your address is different, did you move? And they say yes. And you say, well, where did you move? If they said, I moved to the city of Richmond, they're done. They have to be in the same locality. So, okay, well, nope, I still moved in Chesterfield, so I moved within Chesterfield County, right? So I was living in Midlothian, which is actually the 7th Congressional District. But now I live in Ettrick, which is the 4th Congressional District. They can't vote because they moved to another congressional district. If they meet the two-pronged test, though, they moved in Chesterfield County and they're still in the same congressional district, they can vote, but you get to fill out some paperwork. So you fill out the Affirmation of Eligibility form for this voter. Now, I know you're not going to remember half of this, but at least you will have in your head, oh, wait a minute, I think this person can vote. Let me call the office to make sure I understand what it is they need to do. And then you may be able to qualify the next person yourself by looking at the street file. So the street file actually has the congressional district next to the addresses. Okay? Then we get the easy one. So they moved since the November election last year. That's an easy peasy one. Those people fill out a voter registration application and they vote normally. Easy peasy, right? So what we don't want to see is these people who've not voted in 4 years and they decide to move and then they show up to vote because then they become the issue. So they get to go over to the chief, fill out the paperwork, may not be eligible to vote, and then they're mad and they get to vote a provisional ballot that we're not going to count, okay? Presidential election years, there's another special rule. If a voter moves to another state within 30 days of the election, they moved out of state, so which means they technically aren't qualified, right? But if they move within 30 days of the election, they can vote a presidential-only ballot. So you will have presidential-only ballots on election day. You're only getting a few because we don't expect many people to drive back to Virginia to try to vote. But in the event that you have some, we're going to give them to you. We've also found, and this is not a problem, but this is just information, we've also found this year because of COVID, there are people who were living abroad who are now here. And so they will be marked federal only. And they may show up in your polling place to vote. They get a federal-only ballot. So you're going to have federal-only ballots as well. So they can't vote a full ballot. They just get a federal-only ballot because they're stuck here. They typically are overseas. That will show up in the poll book. Okay. If a voter moves and they move within the same precinct, they're always eligible to vote. But we need to get them to update their address because you don't want them coming back election after election just because they moved down the street and they know they can come back and vote to continue to do that. So get the paperwork done first and then move on, let them vote, checked in the poll book, and keep going. All right. I think, and if you want to see the presidential only, that's on page 14. Federal only is on page 15. Yes. Okay, say that again. Oh, so the question is, how do you deal with the people who claim they have no idea when they move? So that's a good question because here's a good tip. So if they come in, their address is different in the poll book. Um, the first thing you want to do is say, when did you move? Not, do you have a different address? Because they're going to say, well, what do you have? And then you give them the address, and it's like, oh, well, it was, I don't know, maybe last year. But when last year? I don't know. And so I literally do this. Was it hot or cold? Well, I think it was cold. Maybe it was around, Christmas. And then so they start to give you information then. You don't give them information. So people like to pump you for information, and they do that because they want to figure out how to work the system. I hate to say that about my voters, but that's what they do. So I've been doing this for 26 years, and they lie like a rug. So I forgot this was being recorded. But anyway, they do. So the best thing to do is provide as little information as you can and allow them to talk themselves in a circle and then give you the real answer. So that's how you handle them. And then they end up voting provisional. Then they end up voting provisionally. But yeah, that is what you do with them. All right. So when you get those challenges, turn to your what if and look at page 17. So basically what I'm doing is kind of saying to you, you have the information here in your what if document. Just take a look at it, read it. We are always there to assist you. But if you can find the information on your own, it would keep you from having to hold on. Yes. Let's see what else I got here. Oh, Mrs. Bill did pull up the code section about the authorized representatives, and they just have to be, was it in the state, not the locality. Okay. I'm just saying what I need to cover here. Are you gonna take a picture? We can email you the PowerPoint. Okay. All right. I do want to talk about curbside voters before I talk about these provisional. That's what they are, absentee voters. I want to talk about curbside voters just a little bit. Now, typically, well, not typically, the law states that anyone with a physical disability or anyone who's 65 or older, they can vote curbside, right? So that's what the law states. And this is the process that you go through, the same thing that you would go through for a voter inside. For this year, and I think we talked about it probably in June, for this year, if someone is sick, they're feeling sick, they've been around someone who may have been in contact with someone with COVID, then we want them to stay in the car. We want them to go back to the car if they get out the car. So we want to vote those individuals curbside, okay? So be generous with curbside if you need to be, because you don't want anybody coming inside the polling place who may be sick and then spreading whatever it is they may have. It may not be COVID, it could be flu. So you don't want anybody who's sick coming into the polling place and spreading their germs. So you can be generous. You should have the manpower. We have a whole bunch of officers. If you need more floaters that need to be outside, curbside voters, let Alex know. We can make sure we send you more people. But make sure you address this. Make sure you have people outside and they vote curbside if they need to be. Does anybody have any questions about curbside voters? Okay. All right. I'm not going to forget that, but let's go to the paperwork. All right, provisional ballots. Let's talk about absentee voters first. So we have about maybe 50,000 or more people that we've mailed absentee ballots to. You will see a great majority of those people in your precinct on election day. Okay? So we've mailed them ballots. They've changed their mind for whatever reason. They come back to the polling place with their ballot. That one's easy, right? What are you going to do? Take it and spoil it. Okay, I heard take it and spoil it. And then you're going to put your password in and check them in normally and issue them a ballot, right? All right. They come into, which was the unmarked one you said? Oh, that one. All right. So they show up to the precinct, and in the poll book, the status says true, issued, which means that we've issued them a ballot, right? Or even if the status says true, marked. If it says true on machine, that's really bad because they should not be standing in front of you. So if it says true, yes, we issued them a ballot, they don't have it with them. True, we issued them a ballot, and for some reason it looks like they sent that ballot back and they voted it. And true, that it looks like they showed up in person and voted on the machine. What are we doing with these people? Come on, you guys know. They're going to vote a provisional ballot. No questions asked. You don't have to call me. Give them a provisional ballot, okay? They do not have their ballot with them. Now, if they show up and there is absentee unmarked, if it says unmarked, you do not need to call me to allow them to vote because that means they did change their mind, but they did it the right way. They returned the ballot to us, and they didn't mark it, and they said they just didn't want to vote that ballot. So if it says that they're unmarked, they haven't cast a ballot, they turned it back into us because we've changed the status, they can vote normally as well, okay? All right, let's do that again. And this is not a trick, but I'm going to do this way. If the voter shows up in your precinct without their ballot, what is the first thing you're going to look for? The voter's status. If the status is issued or unmarked, what are we doing with the voter? They vote normally. If the status is marked or on machine, what are we doing with that voter? They get a provisional ballot. So you guys got it, but make sure your poll book officers have it, okay? So that's the key right there. You understand that if the ballot was issued, they didn't vote it, maybe they didn't vote it, but they don't have it with them. There's no way for us to determine whether or not they really did mail it back to the office, and we may not get it until election day, and then it's being processed in our central absentee precinct, and we cast that ballot, and then they show up in your precinct to vote again. So issue doesn't prove anything, okay? Now, I will say this. We all make mistakes, right? So if the voter shows up, and I know your poll book officers have done this as well, if the voter shows up and they're adamant that it was not them that voted or it was not them, they, who requested that ballot, they still have to vote a provisional ballot. But you want them to provide as much evidence as possible that it wasn't them. So the board can make a determination whether or not to count their ballot. So if they can prove to us that it wasn't them that voted, then we will make the recommendation to the electoral board to count that ballot. And let me give you a real life example. So we had two brothers. One brother actually requested an absentee ballot through the mail. The other brother did not. The second brother showed up to vote who had not requested a ballot. But because the poll book says, okay, you already voted. No, I'm getting that twisted. Let me back up. It's wrong. It's two brothers. It's two brothers. So the brother who showed up, who had requested the ballot, but his brother had been marked as voting on the machine in his place. So basically what he was asked to do was sign a form saying that he didn't receive the ballot or that he lost the ballot, but he never requested the ballot. But he followed, he did what he was told to do. He did what he was told to do, and he voted. The brother showed up that had actually requested the ballot and said, no, I didn't come in and vote in person the other day. And they're like, well, you're marked as voting in person. He was like, no, my brother voted the other day. And so sure enough, looked up his brother, he wasn't marked. So this young man ended up having to vote a provisional ballot because he was already marked in the poll book. But he explained the situation to us. And it was evident that his brother didn't request the ballot, but he was checked in as the one voting. This young man actually had the ballot in his hand when he came. Mistakes happen, okay? So it could be that the person is telling the truth. They're not lying, they're actually telling the truth. So just make sure they provide enough evidence for you so that you can write it up and we can make a determination whether or not that ballot should be counted. Okay? All right. The envelopes are really simple now, so just make sure the voter fills out the envelopes. Make sure you give the voter notice that goes with the corresponding envelope. If they are voting what we call the regular provisional ballot, which is what color, by the way? What color envelope is that? They're both green. Dark green? Dark green, mint green, the awful color green? The mint green one is the one we call a regular provisional ballot. They have to fill out a voter registration application with those, okay? The lime green ones are the ID provisional ballots. All right, so this is your 1A envelope that you put those little small envelopes in, if you have any. And make sure you put the number that you have, and two of you guys sign off on that. And then you want to make sure you put them all on your provisional ballot log. So each one has to go on your provisional ballot log. All right. I know you've seen this form before, so at the end of the night, you're just going to fill this out. This is your provisional ballot breakout. Assisting voters with disabilities. All right, election day paperwork. So we were talking about those voters in the poll book and who had to fill out this paperwork, right? So you have your affirmation of eligibility and you have your voter registration application. But there's another form, right? The request for assistance form. So if anyone needs assistance, then you make sure that either their assister or if you are the one assisting them, that you fill out the request for assistance form. You want to check all these boxes in the poll book when you check them in. The affirmation, voter registration application. I already talked about the ID, so I don't need to talk about that anymore, except for the provisional ID voters. If they bring their ID back, you just put it in with the paperwork and check the box on the envelope that they came back with their ID. You do not destroy the provisional ballot and issue them another ballot because they came back with their ID. They do not get to come back and vote again. But you can take the copy of their ID and put it with their information. Yes, who's that back? Oh. Wow. So the question is, and I think you meant the voter ID card, right? Not the application. Okay. So the voter comes in with a voter ID card. You look them up, check them in, they vote. And then another voter comes in, they are using a utility bill as their ID, but they're already marked in the poll book as voting. The question is, what happens with that second voter? No, what happens with the first voter who may not have been a legitimate voter who came in with the voter ID card? It's a horrible scenario. So, exactly. So he answered the question up here. It's a done deal. So if that voter has already put that ballot in the scanner, there is nothing that we can do. It is nothing that we can do. Well, well, they're not going to do that. So they're not going to do that. I mean, the question is valid, but there really isn't an answer. That we have, that anything that we can do. So the General Assembly passed this law. So there's really nothing that we can do. Now, I mean, you know, if the husband and wife look that much alike, okay, so the son and the father, if the son comes in, brothers, oh, oh, moving on. I don't know what to do about them. We just pray that they don't show up. That's all I can say about that. I mean, that's awful. They can be prosecuted, you know. So if they're voting in your precinct and you know that someone's trying to, do something that is truly illegal, don't give them a ballot. Get the information. Get their name, get the information. You can, if you're smart and sneaky enough, you can say, well, looks like you're already marked. I think you need to vote a provisional ballot. And let them vote the provisional ballot and write them up. And then we can prosecute them. There you go. That's my answer. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right. So we're going to close the polls at night. So the first thing well, let's not close the polls yet. So you do need to report your results at 10, 2, and 4, right? So if you are in a school, you are reporting them using the Chesterfield election reporting system, which is SHARE. If you're in a county building, you're doing the same. Hopefully the fire stations and all of those places you're able to you can. Perfect. All right. So report those and SHARE. If you're not in a school or a county building, then you have to call those in to me, right? So please call in your numbers at 10, 2, and 4. because the lines are going to be off the chain anyway, I am not going to ask you to do a line count form. You're welcome. You're welcome. I will not have you do that. So at 7 o'clock, there's one more reporting, okay? So, okay, here's the deal. And I love you guys for this. So some of you work so diligently to get all your paperwork done and get everything right and packed up. And then you forget, oh, I haven't called in my results. And so it's the last thing you do instead of the first thing you do. And I love you for being so diligent at doing that. But if you would please do me a favor and call in your results or enter the results as soon as you have them. So split up the duties maybe. Have someone just go and call and enter the results. And then if you need to, you stay back and start filling out your paperwork. Is that fair? Yes, ma'am. Leave her alone. So where you are, so the question is, the question is, she's literal. So I get it. I got that. So the question is, do I want these results? Because I'm asking for them, right? Do I want these results right at 7 o'clock? Or do I want them after the last person has voted? So I want them after the last person has voted. Yes, yes. Yeah. Okay. So report your results, fill out your paperwork. Remember, you got extra work to do because you got to count that little ballot bag that you have with those ballots that were dropped off. So you're going to assign somebody to do that. Hopefully one of the guards or both of the guards can count together so that if there is an authorized representative present, that they can see that there are two people watching the process and that nothing's funny is going on with these people's ballots that you need to bring back to the office. But we've never had a drop off in the precinct before. Oh, the ballots in general. Okay. So it wasn't a question. It was just a statement. Did you have a question? Okay. It wasn't a question. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good question. So the question is, is there a recommendation of a standard place to put the drop-off box or the ballot bag? And I've thought about that as well. And so, I want to say as close to the door as possible, but that's a good question. What do you think? Okay, so what I just heard was it can't be too close to either door because somebody's going to freak out, right? They're going to think somebody's going to come grab the pizza bag. By the way, have you heard? They're going to come grab the pizza bag and run out the door with it. Okay, so them walking across the polling place is not an issue for me. Okay, so if they have to circle out, I don't have a problem with that. Um, so you have your demo table, right? I think maybe after the demo table, somewhere after the demo table, and then they could just circle on back out of the precinct. Well, wait, hold on. So the question was, why not lock it up in the cage? And let me just clarify for you. It is an actual drop-off location for voters to put their ballots in, so we can no longer lock it up. It has to be out where they have access to it. Okay, so I mean that. So let's talk about the obvious places that we don't want to put it. Okay, so and then you can go from there. So we do not want to put it too close to either door. We do not want to put it near the scanner because they might put the ballot in the scanner. Okay, we do not want to put it too close to the poll book table because then they're interfering with people trying to get checked in. And then I'm gonna leave it at that. Okay. Oh, yeah. Please, pretty please, bring them back to the office. Don't lock them up in the cage at the end of the night. When make sure because your officers may be diligently putting things away, and they may just put that bag back in the cage like they normally would do. But we need those ballots back at the office that night. Okay. All right, so you have to fill out both of your statement of results, your printed yellow return sheet. They need signatures of every officer in the polling place that's working. It's an official record of the election. Make sure in the morning when those individuals come in and you're swearing them in that they sign the oath as well. People will take the oath and compare it to the statement of results in the yellow printed return sheet to see if you have the same number of signatures. Okay, you can just follow the guidance in your documents for signing seals. So some will require 2. Anything that has ballots in it is going to require a signature from everyone in the polling place. Okay, so just follow those guidelines. Let's see. Your poll book summary sheet that you're familiar with. I already told you, please don't let them cast a blank ballot. Reminder that when you go to close your polls at the end of the night, that the seal that the machine techs put on it may be covering the little hole where the barrel key goes. You just remove it so you can get in there and close the polls. Voting booth officers need to clean off the voting booths periodically. I said periodically. I said periodically. Here's why I say periodically. If you get a lot of voters in at one time, then you're going to have to make them stand over there while you wipe down all the voting booths. Then you got to wait for them to dry. I was a voting booth officer this election, so I did that, and I'm like, well, wait a minute, this one's wet, and they're going to come plop their ballot down on a wet voting booth. What are you going to do with them? But periodically, okay? Wipe down your hard surfaces. Just keep things clean. You have things, wipe them down. Make sure everything's clean. Spoiled and voided ballots. You do know the difference, right? So somebody, raise your hand. Tell me what a voided ballot is. Not everybody at once. Yes, Beth. She said somebody else. Yes. So a voided ballot, I guess the best way to identify a voided ballot is to say that it was abandoned, right? A voided ballot was abandoned. She described a spoil ballot, and somebody messes up their ballot, they spoil it. If you abandon a ballot, of course, you're done. They can't come back into the precinct and say, hey, I didn't vote my ballot. I want to vote now. No. They get one opportunity to come in and vote their ballot. However, if they do mess up their ballot, they spoil it, they put check marks instead of filling in the oval, then they can get another ballot. Yes. So an absentee ballot is a spoiled ballot. Well, maybe they changed the wording, but it's a spoil. I don't know. This it's a spoiled ballot. It should. It. I'm sorry. Oh, these are absentee, so you didn't issue them, so they don't factor into your count anyway. Uh huh. Okay. Okay. The guidance, well, he's saying that previously the absentee ballot was voided. So the guidance from, and it should be in here, I didn't look it up, from the Department of Elections or State Board of Elections is that an absentee ballot that is surrendered to you is spoiled. Voided does make sense, but, well, okay, so let me address that. Let me address that. So that goes back to the ballot record report, right? Where you have to put on that ballot record report your voided and spoiled ballots. Right. So the ballot record report is a record of the ballots that we sent to you and that you used on election day, and then what you have left. Okay? So absentee ballots were issued from somewhere else. So they do not go in your count. You will be so thankful this election that they don't go in your count. But they do not go in your count because they didn't come out of your stock. Does that make sense to everybody? The absentee ballot was not issued out of your ballot stock. So you do not account for it on your ballot record report. However, if you have voided, spoiled ballots that you issued from your stock, you do record them on your ballot record report because those numbers should add up to the number that we sent you that you received from us. So that's what the ballot record report is, a record of the ballots that we issued to you. So basically it's a chain of custody and a reconciliation. So I said that I gave you 500 ballots and you put down that you issued 400 ballots. You may have had two spoiled. I'm trying to keep the numbers simple because I can't add them up in my head. Two spoiled, two provisionals, blah, 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 whatever. So when I subtract everything that you said that you used from what you said you have left over, I should come back to 500. That is right. So you don't add those in. They. It doesn't matter whether they void or void. You put void or spoil on it. I don't care what you put on them. Honestly, I don't think anybody's going to open them up and look at it. As long as you're putting them in that number 4 envelope, then they all go to the same place. Okay. Do not put them on your ballot record report. It's going to throw your numbers all off. That makes sense. So, is everybody clear on that? Yes? Yes. So, Whatever you, and it's in here. It's in the election, the what if. So whatever you do with these ballots, just don't put them on your ballot record report and put them in your reconciliation. Okay? What was that? I heard something. Your phone numbers, your equipment problem phone numbers, 804-751-4671. Any other issues, you want to call 717-6666. That is the designated number for polling places. If you call the main number, you will be queued with the rest of the citizens in Chesterfield County. So do not call the main number. Do not call and leave messages for staff, because typically we're running around the office. If it's something you need taken care of right then and there, it won't get addressed. And so we don't want you thinking that we're going to call you right back, because that's probably not going to happen. So use this number. We will have 15 people in addition to the staff answering the phones for this election. For your equipment problems, we'll have 2 or 3 people answering those phones as well. So we've added more people to answer the calls. I'm hoping you won't have many calls on election day, but if you do, then we're there for you. Your share, your passwords, and all of that stuff you'll pick up on Sunday. And of course, any problems or incidents that you have or you see, you can definitely report. I'll get you in a minute. There have been questions, and there are no answers. I'm going to tell you this now. I'm going to tell you now. There have been questions of what I'm telling you guys to do about voter intimidation. Voter intimidation. I am telling you guys that you're in control of everything that happens inside that 40-foot prohibited area. If something happens or you see someone doing something that is impeding voters from coming in and going out, or trying to force a voter to take something that they don't want, then that certainly is a call to our office to report that. If it looks threatening, that's a call to 911 first, and then a call to our office. Okay? If they're outside the 40-foot prohibited area, say they are a poll watcher, not a poll watcher, but they are poll watchers, but they're outside handing out literature, and they just happen to have on 2 guns holstered to their sides. Okay? Technically, they're not intimidating anyone because the guns are holstered. If they take the gun out and hold it in their hand, then there is the potential for harm, right? So whether you call it voter intimidation or just someone threatening someone else, then you call 911. So if you see that, you call 911. If anybody asks you, have you been trained on voter intimidation? You tell them you've been trained on emergency procedures and what to do in your polling place if a problem occurs. That's what you tell them. Okay? Yes, ma'am. Oh, thank you. Guns on school property. So again, once again, we go back to voting, right? As long as they're not open carrying those weapons, so we ask them not to. We say that they're open carry is prohibited, is what the signs say, right? Put the freaking thing under your jacket or, somewhere where people are not seeing it, and then we're not going to say anything to you about a gun, right? Because we ask you not to do that. Of course, yes, guns are prohibited on school property, so if they kick back, then we have a leg to stand on in a school. Private property, not so much. Not so much. So I'm just hoping that everyone behaves themselves this election and they bring their little guns, the 22s, and not the, 45s or the fancy long silver ones with the pearl handles to the polling place on election day. But in all, being serious, guys, just being really serious here, take care of yourselves, take care of your officers, and watch out for the voters as well. So if you see something that could potentially be a problem, then you want to report it, okay? Yes, we have asked them to be more aware and more responsive to what happens around polling places. Right. So the question is, will the police be more responsive? If you call 911, you have to give them the address of the school. Are you going to go in a queue? They have the addresses of all of our polling places, and they are aware that, there may be the potential for some activity on election day. So, yeah. So the question is, excuse me, guys. Thank you. The question is, should you say, okay, this is precinct 402, and then give them the address of the polling place in addition to that? So it does not hurt to say, hey, I'm calling from a voting precinct, and this is the address, and this is what's going on. So yeah, then they would definitely respond quicker, but also call us, because we will also have an officer available to us that can radio another police officer and say, hey, this is what's going on. Okay, that was another question over here. I'm going to give you your oath and get you out of here. Yes, ma'am? Page what? 26? Okay. So she was reading page 26 where it tells you there needs to be, excuse me. So she was reading page 26 where it tells you that there needs to be 2 officers if you're doing voting a voter outside the polls. It is a very old law. It is still on the books. It is guidance. So if there are not 2, it's okay. All right, because we know the chief and deputy can't go out to do curbside voting all day long, right? But yeah, so you're not breaking the law. You're okay. All right, are we ready for the oath? You want me to do?
Sorry. Where am I reading? I see it. All right. Raise your right hand. I do solemnly swear that I will perform the duties for this election according to the law and the best of my ability, and that I will studiously endeavor to prevent fraud, deceit, and abuse in conducting this election. So help me God. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Good night.